Now, while running, the scene that we've created inside of a small window like we're seeing here might be convenient. If you're looking to validate the content that you've created, you might actually want to run this full screen if you're going to be running this inside of a fully deployed simulator, whether that's a single screen system or a multi-screen simulator that's running across multiple computers. Now, to be able to specify the actual size of the window, we can go back to the Vortex Studio editor to modify the configuration that the player application is using. So here I'll go ahead and close my player, and I'm going to go back to the editor. And then I'm going to go and open a file. Now the file that I'm looking for is under the Vortex Studio 2017 setup directory. And I'm going to be selecting here the resources folder, then the config folder, to go and find my player configuration file. More specifically, it's the player network file that I'm going to be looking for, and that's the file that's loaded to start up all of these different processes, the dynamics, as well as the visual elements of the player. So I'll double click on this file, and this will open it up here inside of the Vortex Studio editor. Now what we'll see in here, if I zoom in a bit closer, is first of all the virtual head of the person that's going to be using the simulation, and then the screen that's in front of this person. Now that screen is where we could want to make some changes. If I expand here my setup tree, I'll be able to see that I have a slave and a master. The master is all of the different configuration elements that are assigned to the dynamics engine, whereas the slave section is all the elements that are assigned to the visual application that we're going to be using to visualize the simulation we're running. Other elements up top are going to be common elements that are shared between the master and the slave. So under the slave, I'm going to be selecting here the main window, and we'll see here that we're currently in a windowed mode for the placement of the window. Instead, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to go to a fixed mode where I can go and specify an offset and a dimension for the screen. So I'm going to set here the first two parameters to 0 and 0, because that's an offset from the corner of the screen, and then I'm going to be specifying the width and height of that window. Now I am on an HD screen, so I'm going to choose 1920 and 1080 for these parameters, and then save this configuration file. So when I launch the player now, I'm going to see that the window is going to take up the full size of the screen. So now I'm seeing that the core window is loading, and now I'm using up the entire screen. I can use Alt-Tab to be able to switch between the different windows of the player. Then I can go and select here the forklift scene. And so once it's loaded, then I'll be able to run. And so now I'm running this full screen on my computer, and I can go and again control the forklift and be able to steer it within the environment. So all of the extensions that were used inside of the editor, including gamepads, any custom plugins you might have created for Vortex, are all going to be active within the player environment.